Click the button.
This.
Welcome to your awakening. Please take care as your reality is adjusted.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back once again. Another edition of Sol Excalibre on this moon day evening. Stop screen share. Greetings, salutations, well met fellow hail. Just gone 8 p.m. I was running a bit late. If anybody else has a Windows operated machine, Microsoft Windows, you might have experienced a big update today. It took nearly 4 hours to get my system done. I thought I wasn't going to be able to get online in time to get set up, and just about managed to squeeze in at the last minute with like half an hour to spare to send out invites and stuff like that. But we are here once again, another episode on the 10th of the 2nd, 2020. And I'm glad that this week there isn't so much of the synchronicities of numerals this week with this episode. Could probably stretch it a bit talking about the 2s plus the 3s and stuff like that, but it just gets silly. You're desperately reaching for a bias just to make something out of the numbers. Today, on the 10th of the 2nd month of the year 2020, the year of vision, the year of Horus, possibly. Maybe that's part of their intent. I've only got a certain amount to talk about this evening because I've been busy doing other stuff over the weekend. Good stuff, but preoccupied with doing other things. So I've only had half an eye on some of the news media, as I usually do, which includes the supposed alternative news, just to see what's been going on. And the main points, 2 main points, but one really is the primary, the pinnacle that stood out to me, which I'll get into talking about in a bit. But it adds into a further narrative similar to I was talking about last week with Dr. Huhan and the narrative creation, where it's been included in media propaganda that would have been written, scripted, filmed and edited and produced many weeks before the actual data broadcast. Yet the data broadcast just so conveniently happened to coincide with the rolling out of this so-called pandemic outbreak, which even the WHO, the Doctor Who of the Wuhan, the WHO have said officially that it's not a pandemic. They're still not calling it a pandemic, even though in nearly every country, the national press is talking about the new pandemic. It's coming. Be afraid. Wash your hands. Don't cough. Things like that. So furthering from that, it very much piqued my interest when I saw during the week the mention, and this is why the subtitle in the info box tonight, this episode is 21% pangolin. You may not have noticed because I can't say I could readily find any reference to this story in the English language news outlets. You got the primary one, Reuters. There's 1 or 2 others. BBC produces its own output, but it relies heavily on Reuters as well. So really, BBC is just another part of Reuters outlet. But I didn't readily find this news covered by the English language media. And it didn't seem to pop up on the general UK media, the news, national news, or the local news. But I saw it online, and it seemed to be covered a lot more by foreign language news services, particularly in the East. So places like Korea and Taiwan, possibly some of the others in that area. But the point is, they were covering it, and they brought up this supposed expert advice. This is coming on the back of supposedly information put out by experts in the field, talking about how the virus can be transmuted from the animal kingdom to humanity to be passed on to people. But yeah, the main point being the story about the pangolin. I'll see if I can find the particular video package I was looking at the other day, which I shared in a comment on Annie Logical's latest video. If you haven't seen that one, please go and check out the video she put up not so long ago. I'll find, if I can. That's the wrong one. History. Give me my history file. Come on, faster. Do more, you crappy Windows machine. Scrolling down. That's it. Yeah, if you check out her channel name is actually Logical Annie, and the latest video, Virus Shown in World Events Part 2, where she's collating evidence that shows that there has been an ongoing media platform provided narrative. In other words, all the media platforms are pushing this same sort of script, even if they don't directly state it for what it is. It's done subtly in imagery or themes contained within the articles that are being covered, certain recurrent themes. But she shows that there's been this ongoing narrative of foreshadowing, preceding in the public's mind the fear of viral outbreaks, of pandemics, the classic kind of cheesy cliche like World War Z, that there is some major pandemic coming that is going to cause mass casualties, mass deaths, and it's going to cause society to be in a state of extreme flux. Heavy security everywhere and things like that. The security state to a large extent. But I posted a link under there of one of the videos I found where the details were actually in English, simply because it's done as a infotext kind of news video. I'll see what I can screen share of it for now. I'm not going to play it just in case of copyright crap, because I know they love to jump as soon as they can, but hopefully you can say that. So even the YouTube doing its new thing of sticking its little sub bar underneath going, here's your genuine fact from the Ministry of Truth about coronavirus. But this is a story that I found on GMA News, which I think is Korean. I can't say for 100% certain, but judging by the language used, it looks Korean, or it could be Taiwanese. No, because that would be more Chinese, wouldn't it? Anyway, yeah. They're now going back to the data point. This was uploaded February 7th, 2020. The data point of the pangolin being a possible carrier of the virus. Is the video going to progress the image? No? You're going to force me to play it. Right, well, before that gets to a copyright stage, we will stop playing it. Oh, man. Crap. Let's try opening that in a different tab. Stick it in Chrome tab. Anyway, this was just to make the point that foreign language news reporting is covering this story, whereas the English language news sources don't seem to be bothering. I don't know whether that might just be lag on the part of the the English language providers of catching up to that the story is now part of the narrative again. Or now hopefully you can see that. Yeah, all right. Or maybe it's more to do with the fact that they don't feel the English language audience is as important in this particular detail. The reason I feel it's necessary to say that is because in some parts of the world, pangolins are used in traditional medicine. So, you know, they are basically killed for their parts, processed into various things that people use either as medicine or because they think it's an aphrodisiac or something like that. This story as well is still adhered to the premise that the virus outbreak was because of mishandling within a food market environment, you know, cross-contamination within a food market environment. So there's that question to this story, in that according to the latest evidence, it is most likely that the virus does not come from the food market, or the origin point is not from the food market. But this may be more relevant to the Asian audience because they consume pangolins, as I say, for various reasons. So it could just be a conservation opportunity, a conservation propaganda opportunity for them to put this story in front of the Asian audience to say, look, you know, if you keep consuming this animal, which is endangered, that's the point of the conservation argument, then, you know, you might be more likely to get the disease because these animals act a little bit like pigs in that their biology means they can transmit or transmute viruses, bacteria from the animal kingdom to the human world. So keep that possibility in mind that this has only appeared on those other language news reporters because it's a conservation element that they feel is an opportunity to put in front of that audience. And therefore, that's why it's not being talked about in the English press. But, and thank you, Gary, for finding that image for me. As I said earlier, I hadn't had the chance to get prepped for this, but this is absolutely extremely relevant. And this is why when I saw that story pop up amongst the chatter of what was going on the YouTube streams, I thought, what? Pangolin back again in this narrative? Well, that's a very relevant data point in that script. It wasn't quite where I remembered. I thought it was further north. Yeah, it's the bulldog that's on top of Canada. The pangolin on top of South America, right next to Angelina. So, yeah, do you remember not so long ago, the World in 2019 cover on The Economist? And as we've talked about a few times in the past, because, you know, we've covered a few of these different covers. We've covered the cover. We talked about these issues that The Economist does, where they'll have this kind of cover that has various cryptic clues embedded in it, like a crossword puzzle or pictographic puzzle, that they seem, and this is my attitude to it, has been for a few years, that it seems to be that they do this very deliberately, knowing full well that a whole demographic of people out there will be interested in and caught up in and fascinated by the task of decrypting that cover and what it's supposed to mean in some fashion, if it means anything at all. So we've often talked about these covers, and this one we did sort of have a look at, and we were pointing out different elements of it and how various parts seem to be thematic from various agendas and propaganda narratives that they've been pushing for a number of years. So when I saw that pangolin pop up again in the news, I thought, hey, up here we go again. And there it is on The Economist cover. You see it, bottom left of the cover. So are we now witnessing the actual enactment of a narrative script that was written prior to the production of that cover. So that basically that storyline, which includes the pangolin, has been added into that narrative, and now is the time when that is being played out. Possibly. But as I mentioned earlier, the pangolin is an endangered species. So it's been on the conservation list for quite a while, and it's a little bit of a celebrity for various reasons. I remember when we were talking about it at the time, when we were covering this cover, and talking about some of the concepts that seem to be hinted at in the picture itself. One of those primary elements is that pangolin, and the mythological implications of that creature as like a totem, as an archetype that represents something more than just the creature itself. In medieval times, they were considered to be the equivalent of baby dragons, to put it simply. And there are alchemical theorems that include the use of things like the scales from a pangolin. So they were considered magical creatures. They are considered somewhat magical in the area where they're indigenous to. So that's part of the reason why they're part of that culture of natural medicine, because people see them as important, both physically within the biosphere, but also mythologically and spiritually. They have a significance for them culturally. And that transmitted over the centuries into Western culture, or got absorbed into Western culture in that kind of occultic and mystical element of the archetype of what the creature represented. It seemed to be a relative of the supposed mythical dragons of the ancient ages. So, very interesting that comes up again at the moment. When we were just talking before I clicked the start button, and I said to Gary, if you get a chance, can you please see if you can find that image? And in my memory, I thought the pangolin was further north, nearer Canada, which I thought would have made an even more significant reference to the transmission, supposedly, of the virus, which allegedly originates from the labs in Canada and was either given, sold, or stolen, or however, it got taken over to be used in the labs in Wuhan. So there's that part of what's been going on recently that stood out to me. And then another element of it that this is sort of like a continuation of what I was saying last week. There's been so many ducks in a row with this supposed outbreak, and certainly the propaganda that's going along with it, that even though I'm sort of a little bit reluctant to say it, because I know so many people could take it the wrong way, so I have to be careful how I say it and caveat myself. As I said last week, I'm not suggesting that nobody's died and there isn't a real illness that is occurring and stuff like that. I don't think I've got enough evidence or access to enough evidence to be able to prove categorically that it's some kind of hoax. But I think the probability that it is very much a manipulated situation, maybe there is some kind of illness, but what the cause of that illness is, or what exactly the illness is, could be something completely different to the excuse that they're using, because that very excuse of it being the alleged coronavirus, the new novel coronavirus, it just perfectly suits that narrative. It slots in far too perfectly, because that's exactly the narrative and the kind of viral outbreak that they've been referencing in their foreshadowing propaganda, such as Annie Logical points out in her videos, and many other people have shown that kind of thematic element to the propaganda, like the Olympic events, where the iconography, the imagery is all sort of virus and bacteriologically related. So this is like more ducks in a row. The pangolin is another duck in that row of, oh, there you go, they're referencing their own cover story again. But please bear in mind, The Economist is owned by the Rothschilds. The Rothschilds have a controlling interest in Reuters. So these news outlets follow a script that comes down from one very particular control group. Doesn't mean to imply that that means they have control over everything, but they certainly have control over these outputs, these outlets that a lot of the world's media rely on as being the continuous foundation that they build their world narrative around. And by that I mean the general consensus of what is actually happening in the world, and what is the news today, things like that. So there's images from Annie's videos, cool. So the other part that sort of was another duck swimming into line was I can't say I've confirmed this myself directly, but I've got no real reason to disbelieve it, because people could generally access this information. So if you choose to distrust the conclusion, you can easily check the working out, as it were. But when people have analysed the statistical output in the numbers that are being presented by the Chinese media via the Tencent outlet, that's a kind of like news and social media outlet that the Chinese government uses to put their official narrative out to their public, to the Chinese public. The numbers that they've been publishing of how many people are confirmed infected, how many people are cured, how many people have died, those numbers, when they've been analysed, the death ratio consistently, day after day, was either 0.2% or 0.21%. So either 20 or 21. That's why in the subtitle I put this episode is 21% pangolin. It would be one thing if there was a little bit of a curve, even, if there was a little bit more variance. But when day after day it was becoming consistently 0.2 or 0.21%, that really begins to, make you question just how many coincidences do you allow before it becomes a conspiracy. How many coincidences does it take to reveal a conspiracy? These narrative elements, the 0.2 and 0.21 could be a deliberate reference to the year and the agenda, as in its year 2020, 20th year, when they're trying to get into the year 21 with the agenda 21 and UN agenda, exactly right. It could be a reference to that. It could also be a reference, or it could be combined as a reference to Event 201, which again, the reason possibly why they use that title, that name 201, is because you've got the reference again to the year 20 and 2021 and Agenda 21. This is why the coincidences in these events is just far too much to be easily considered coincidental. You have to really, really want, you have to have a desire bias to accept these as being natural happenstance occurrences of coincidence. One or two things aligning in this fashion, even maybe three or four, could just be kind of like, well, there's that many people around, we've been expecting something like this, so we were just prepared, and it just so happens that our preparations matched the way things happen, because we could foresee, we're such experts, we're so amazing at figuring out what's going on in the world, like the economists cover, all those little cryptic clues to try and make you feel like you can connect them together and figure out what's going on. It's the same kind of illusionist trick of, oh, no, you can't figure it out. You can't add up all these data points and see the connection, the arc of the trajectory of the agenda that's been enacted. No, dude, just believe the illusion. Watch me wiggle my fingers. Look at the cuddly creatures on the screen. Oh, don't look at what's actually happening in the background, or what those icons, what those archetypes represent. Can you see the 666? Yeah, and he points out a lot of this in her videos, as well as I think I mentioned it last week as well, that when the evacuees returned to the UK and they were picked up at the airport by 4 coaches. I thought it was white horse coaches, but it was horsemen. Annie just showed the image of the coach liner at some point towards the end of a video, I think. You know, these elements are very, very dramatic, very theatrical, and serve a very deliberate purpose of feeding cookie crumbs, Scooby snacks into the general populace, into the demographic that wants to figure out what's going on. So like the Economist cover, yeah, the C7 connection, that novel coronavirus was categorized C7. And as you can just about make out on there, there's a C painted in white paint and a 7 in black paint. The image is sort of slightly inverted. Yeah, the inversion in a mirror image again. And the lotus out of the apple. Yes, mate. But those elements all coming together at the moment. I'm sorry, but to me, it's just far beyond coincidence. This is obvious theatrical scripting for dramatic effect and to create a wealth of pseudo data points for the newly created, or certainly within the last few years, fully conceived conspiracy demographic that now exists as the limited hangout venting principle as it has been installed into the social media, public media consumption method. That might have been a little bit of a word salad to try and explain what I mean by that. We have access to all these media streams, these media formats such as Reuters, BBC, as well as just entertainment, you know, the news services and whatever else. And in this modern age, that includes the so-called alternative media environment where you're utilizing social media platforms to have an exchange of information. Those environments have been very much corralled to a very large extent. I'm not saying it's impossible for you to have genuine interactions on these platforms. You can, but they are monopolized by the control structure. And that's compartmentalized and franchised out into little groupings, such as the now very much well-established business model of the conspiracy demographic genre, where people will have a certain kind of setup online, they'll output a certain format of content, and they will cover all of these kind of subjects, and they'll either have a donating button, or they'll have a membership subscription scheme, or they'll have books to sell, or they'll have t-shirts for sale. They'll have a business model, monetary producing income method that they do this thing with. And the system has set that up deliberately to act as a limited hangout venting process. So they create those kind of situations deliberately. They know that a large portion of the public will at least have a general interest in what's occurring around this story, and a certain percentage, maybe it's about 21% thinking about it, but a certain percentage of that public that is interested in this story will be interested enough to take note of things such as there's 4 coaches and they're from a company called Horsemen. What's going on? Are they trying to give us a reference to the 4 horsemen? Are they doing this deliberately? Yes, they are doing it deliberately, because they need to provide a resource for that newly created commercialized business model to churn over, to create a product out of that can then hopefully sate or at least vent the angst and the curiosity and the interest of those people that look at these subjects and start asking questions. So why is The Economist cover covered with those kind of cryptic little images to try and give you little Scooby snack clues so you can follow the trail and discover that it's really the old guy that used to run the fun fair that's actually doing the stuff that's going, you know, the usual kind of silliness. Exactly the same with this kind of stuff. And if you look at that arc of the script that has been played out around this coronavirus and see those foreshadowing connections, such as Annie's demonstrating in her videos, and Jeff C's covered a lot of this stuff in his coverage, talking about the little elements in the media propaganda that have been building up now for years, to the point where then when they then enact this script, they know a large portion of the public is going to be convinced, just because they've been waiting for it to happen and they have a predisposed bias that has been put into them via this media propaganda. So when they see the news report saying, oh, outbreak in China and all these people are getting ill and they're shutting the cities down, they'll go, oh yeah, of course they are. We knew it was going to happen. We could see it coming, because they were told to see it coming by the very same media like last year or the year before or the year before that. So this is an implanted bias that is then being enacted upon. And at the same time, they know that there's a certain amount of the population, the public, that is going to be skeptical, maybe a bit more critically thinking and questioning these things as they're being reported. And for them, there is this next sub-layer of complexity. That complexity being things such as the cryptic clues and leading you to dead ends and areas where you just cannot gain enough evidence or proof to be able to move any further. So it's not as if you're ever going to get enough proof to take people into a courtroom and maybe get them prosecuted and have them held culpable for their crimes against the world, however you want to describe that kind of process. But you're never going to get to that stage. So instead, they keep making you think that, oh, we just a bit further, just keep following the rabbit. Keep following. You might find it eventually. Oh, look, you just found another little interesting chewy bit. Here you go, here's another one. And in that way, by the time you've realized you're running in circles, the time has already moved on. This stuff has already been played out. The news media has been told to move on to something else in the next part of the agenda. And the actual infrastructure that they used this event as justification to set up and turn on is now on and running. Gary's showing the elements from Annie's video where she's talking about the military games, which has been going for a little while, but obviously not as long as the actual Olympic Games, but it's sort of like the military version of the Olympic Games. So the people who turn up to participate are like the best from each country's military, whether land, air or sea, whatever, but they're best military personnel to compete in these athletics games, etc. But at the same time, similar to the Olympics, they have these kind of introduction ceremonies, opening ceremonies, which include elements that are very, again, archetypal, symbolic. They represent elements that are part of the narratives and the agendas that they want to instill. Because remember, they in a way, there is a bit of a separation between military and civilian, but military people are people as well, even though you might question that, but they are still people. So they have to convince them as well. They have to keep that gung-ho element of trust us, we're the officers, we're the people in charge, we know what we're doing, just follow your orders, do as you're told. So the same way that they have to program and propagandize the general public, the civilian public, they have to do the same with the militaries as well. So this indicates that they're carrying out that kind of process, and in that process, they're including that UN element. That is the core part of the little propaganda ceremony that they do with the military games. It's all about the UN, the one world global government military system. So they're prepping the nation's military forces to operate in a unified way following a UN scripted agenda. And that UN scripted agenda happens to coincide with the coronavirus script agenda as it's been played out. And as I talked about last week, they're using that agenda, they're playing out that theatre of the outbreak and the pandemic and how it's so contagious. It passes by air and it can stay on surfaces. So you can't go anywhere, folks. You've got to just stay in your home and wash your hands all day long. Don't breathe because you might get it, and you might die. So they're relying on that fear of death and disproportionately fueling that fear by the way they present, the way they frame the information. As I said earlier, whether it's true or not, I can't say one way or the other because it's not like I'm there hands-on to see the evidence. So all I can do is talk about the numbers they show to us, that they show to the public. But they are amplifying that fear, while at the same time, people are encouraged to forget about their concerns of other illnesses or problems that have a much higher death rate per year than this virus. People dying from the just normal influenza or complications brought about by influenza, seasonal flu. I mentioned that last week as well, is the fact that they released this storyline during winter time when, or during the flu season, when a lot of people are going to be feeling the kind of symptoms that this supposedly gives you anyway. So that gives them sort of like an accelerated start off to amplify people's fear from, because a lot of people will have a cough and a sniffle and whatever over winter. And then they just fall into that kind of paranoia trap of, have I got the illness? Oh, do I go to the hospital? I don't want to go to the hospital because I might never come back again, things like that. And when you see the images of those so-called it's at least two, I think there's more than that now, the hospitals that they built within so many days. And most of the Western news media has been obsessed with showing that. Of like, oh, look how amazing China is. We show you this time lapse of them building these hospitals overnight and all this kind of stuff. And it's very childish, because when you actually look at the details of what's going on, and if you have any comprehension of building constructions and hospital, medical environments and things like that, these things are porta cabins that have been linked together on a concrete foundation. And in terms of the health aspect of them, they are isolation cubicles that are perfectly designed to allow somebody to die in. You put someone in there, they're sealed in, the doors don't open except through passcodes and stuff like that. There's a little hatch where they pass food and whatever through, which also is passcoded, and there's bars on the windows. So once you're in there, it's like you're in a prison cell. You ain't getting out unless the people on the outside let you out, which means if they think you've got a deadly infectious disease, you go in there, close the cubicle, they'll just wait for you to die. They'll let the disease burn itself out by your death. That's not a hospital. That's a mass morgue, basically. That's an environment to bring people to die in so that the virus burns itself out, if there is any truth to the alleged virus, etc. But the Western media has been obsessed with that kind of childish fascination of, oh, look how quick they built. Oh, isn't it amazing? Look at them build. Oh, look at it go. Look at it go. And it is that's the kind of mindset they want the UK populace, the Western populace, to be in. You know, just in that kind of confusion of a child not understanding the complex things that are going on around them, and they're just fascinated by all the coming and going and the lights and the action and the busyness and whatever else. You know, it's exciting, things going on. So 21% pangolin. I'll just say one more time, I'm not trying to say or suggest or imply, well, maybe there is implication, but I'm certainly not trying to assert that I have any kind of certainty or proof or evidence that this virus is completely fake or hoaxed, or that any of the deaths or any of the people getting dragged away is all staged or acted. No, I don't believe it is. They can readily do things such as that once the majority of the populace has bought the lie. So if the majority of the populace in Wuhan believe that there is this virus going round and that it is deadly, then when those little vans turn up with the policemen all dressed in the paper suits and they start kicking down doors and dragging people forcibly to isolation, the population isn't going to say anything. They're going to stay in their door and look through the little peephole and not go out, because they might catch the virus too. So they don't need to provide a massive amount of proof and evidence. They just need to create the implication. So maybe it is an element of fakery or hoaxery, or false flag may be a better term to apply, because in a false flag, the actual action can genuinely take place. People can die or be injured, but the way it is presented or framed to the public when it is reported on, that creates the false flag element that they imply that it was somebody else that caused that action to happen.
And blame it on the pangolins, Cookie.
Yeah,
you know,
blame it on the transmogrifying creature.
Yeah,
that merges the line between the animal kingdom and the world of man.
Yeah, it's funny because I've been away a couple of weeks, as you know, and when I left,
back on, right?
Yeah, I'm back, and I left a couple of weeks ago, mentioning this had just started to bubble away, didn't it? And got sent an email, The Truth About Cancer. I've subscribed to that. The other week, I think they were doing some conferences on stuff. It looked quite interesting, and they keep sending me emails now. And this is an interesting one they sent me, that saying that the coronavirus, you know, proof it's man-made, and the censorship that's going on. Obviously, you know, people talking about it or trying to share stories about, you know, is it fake or whatever. All these stories have been, you know, shut down. It says Google has followed suit, pushing updates from World Health Organization to the top search results involving the coronavirus. YouTube, owned by Google, will also make it harder to find independent information about the virus, promoting videos from public health organizations and mainstream media outlets. It also says why they're censoring this information. It says here, for several years, Bill Gates has been telling us that a pandemic is coming. And on October the 18th, 2019, collaborating with the World Economic Forum, which is Davos, as you know, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation hosted event 201, where they ran a simulation of the coronavirus pandemic. It says a meeting of the globalist health minds occurred on November the 6th to discuss its findings with 9 recommendations. One recommendation included deleting, erasing, censoring disinformation on social media. That's just one of the things. It says it goes on, but that's just that's one section of that little email I got.
Davos was happening while the outbreak began. This year's Davos convention was underway when the outbreak was announced. However many weeks ago it was now, or is it 3 weeks ago or so?
Yeah,
the first case was December, but they didn't announce it until January. So.
I'll just read out the last little bit. There's only the last little bit there. I'll read it out. It says a study by 5 Greek scientists published in the 27th of January, not that long ago, a few weeks back, 2020, examined the genetic relationships of the nCoV 2019 virus and found that the new coronavirus provides a new lineage for almost half of its genome, with no class genetic relationships to other viruses within the subgenus or Sabacovirus, I can't pronounce that, Sabacovirus, it says, and has an unusual middle segment never seen before in any coronavirus. And this last bit here says, what exactly does that mean? It says, basically, this means that we are dealing with a brand new type of man-made coronavirus. The study authors rejected the original hypothesis that the virus originated from random natural mutations between different coronaviruses. There's an article you can go to there where you can read a bit more. It says Bill Gates, the WHO, and everyone else in the medical industry are working on the vaccine for this virus, a vaccine they patented half a decade before the virus appeared, a virus that was created in a lab. But that's just another coincidence, right? God bless. God bless. Yeah, thank you for that email. Yeah.
There has been some coverage of it. I'm not sure if it's still progressing. I haven't been able to check today, but and I can't remember his name. I'm pretty sure he was a PhD or something like that. Somebody who studied virology for most of his academic career. Yeah? And he said he'd looked at it, he'd examined the virus and found HIV elements to it. We sort of mentioned this a little bit on last week's episode. Yeah, and from his analysis in that way, he was saying like, it has to be man-made or man-altered, which implies that it's come out of that lab or it's a deliberate release, something like that.
And anything
also make it work with the vaccine, because if they've already got the vaccine prepared, then they need the virus to be constructed in such a way that the vaccine works against it.
Yeah, and Bill and Melinda Gates, we know these, we've been mentioning, talking about this for quite a few years, these people, these so-called, well, they think they can change the world because they've been so successful. They've got all their little NGOs set up and everything is going hunky-dory for them, and they get all the good press and everything else. And then it's interesting, we see, I mean, it's looking at the map there, just seeing, Australia, China, Australia had the fires, China's got the coronavirus. We're seeing a lot of unsettling of people and a lot of fear mongering. And I think, when you look at the numbers of people who are actually being infected, and I think it's right, the media will blow all of this out of proportion. They always do. They blow the weather out of proportion, as you know. It's just what they do these days. Everything is huge or massive, or it's sudden, or it's that kind of way it's been. The journalism's changed over the years. It's all that now. So people are beginning to react. I think they see the news headlines today on the BBC about the Brighton GP practice that have been sort of shut down, and then people being taken to various places in the UK for isolation, as you mentioned. Who've been either visiting China and they've been taken there, they come back to the UK, and others now beginning to experience problems, and the media are right on it, with the, each case. And then, we're seeing this kind of build up. And then I heard on the Radio 5 Live, which is the BBC radio, digital radio site, had some government person on there, health person, saying about, isolation isn't that bad. It's crazy. I mean, I wish I'd recorded that interview, because he was asking the presenter, who was saying, asking all the right questions as they do at the Beeb, the way that they does that mean people have to be taken away by force? It's like, oh no, it's not like, it's
they are.
Basically, if you got the virus, and we see that video, I don't think that video is fake. I've seen the same video you're talking about some people or some guy, or I can't.
If you see the extended clip, because a lot of the news only showed a short clip, but the extended clip, it's his whole family. Yeah, it's just he was the one that was putting up the most fight, that they had to have the four guys drag him away, basically. But his wife, and I think his mum as well. And you see some of the other guys just sort of manhandling them and walking them out the door. So it's like, no, you don't get any choice. You get forcibly isolated.
Well, it says here, Arrow Park Hospital on the Wirral and Kents Hill Park Conference Centre in Milton Keynes have been designated as isolation facilities in the UK. Evacuees from Wuhan who travelled to the UK on 2 flights chartered by the Foreign Office are currently in quarantine at those locations.
So those are the foundations of your re-education camps. because that's a lot of what this narrative adds up to. You know, that again is something I talked about last week and I've banged on about for a while, but it's to really implement the security state, the police state as it used to be called, but the security state is more apt these days because it's not so much manpower, it's technical overwatch, it's the digital panopticon that is going to enable them or allow them the infrastructure to actually do this. And that's been proved in the situation in China, which is what I was showing last week with talking about the drones being used to basically police people. Yeah, they weren't being used to directly herd people, but they were doing it psychologically by having a presence, you know, a digital remote presence to police people.
Yeah,
but it's the perfect justification to initiate that kind of security state environment. And in that, you'll need somewhere to send the dissidents. And the dissidents will be all those people who question the official narrative, you know, who buck the system in some fashion. So if you're a dissident and they want to be able to just quietly take you off the play field, as it were, they'll just, you know, they'll get somebody to report that they heard you sniffling and coughing, and then they'll be at your door and they'll forcibly take you away to, you know, isolate you because you might have the virus. And the virus that they're talking about is truth-telling. Yeah.
Yeah. If it does come to that, they will use the same language. You're accused of viral thinking. People say, "Oh, I remember when things used to go viral. Oh, that's terrible. Good. Take him away. Yeah. You'll be accused of viral thinking.
Yeah. And memes will cross the boundary between being something non-physical that is about ideas and concepts, even though, you know, sometimes they can trigger people in a good or a bad way, but they'll cross that border into being considered something the equivalent of an actual virus, as in you can catch them like a disease. So then we're getting closer towards that kind of atypical dystopian sci-fi setting where you will be required to have right think. And if you get a bad idea or if somebody says a bad phrase to you, a bad concept such as free speech, that's actually infected your mind. So you have to go to a re-education camp to be cleansed of that wrong thing.
Well, this is where it is. I wanted to quote Britannia and the Roman guy. Yeah, you don't defeat these people by fighting their warriors. You have to fight their gods.
Yeah.
And you know, a lot of this ties into a couple of other strands that we've been going along with, and that is partly the hive mind. And then I saw something on Jeff C the other day, and there's this woman, white, middle-aged, looking like a soccer mum, yeah, with a baggy blouse and big trousers because she's a fat body, yeah, and like she's just trying to, you know, and she's taken. I mean, that is it. She's a soccer mum. She's been to night school or something. That's the stereotype she's playing. And I wrote something down here the other day. Yeah, I'll just read out the notes rather than try and rearrange it. Okay. I'll put my glasses on. My one-armed glasses. My individualism is in my character and personality, and my primitive urges and instincts I recognize as being common to all. This woman, your individuality is stuck to your urges, and you seek to excuse this lower state by taking a personality that is common to all, a government-approved stereotype personality, a uniform accepted by government. And this is, you know, this is it. Like you want to be what you want to be. No, what they want to be is one of the stereotypes that have been created for them, because they think their primitive urges, you know, food, fight, fuck, all the rest of it, they think that is themselves. And they go, and they're a little bit guilty about that. So they obey a voice of authority rather than knowing that the bodily part of yourself is what is common to all of us.
It's like a sociopathic mask.
It's evolution, and they haven't taken a step. Yeah, I don't want to hate these people. I don't want to criticize them. I want to educate them. I want to cure them. So why are they still on that bottom rung? Why don't they step up and have a real personality rather than one that's been given to them? I mean, it's so much better, isn't it?
Well, that's I agree with you, man, but it is a very deep psychological and philosophical question and discussion.
I can go into that as well, because
it comes back to the way the system indoctrinates people, isn't it? It is the outside other, and it convinces the self that it is the real self. So it gets people to externalize and then gives them back a fake version of themselves to try and emulate, to fill that gap that it has created in the first place.
Yeah, a large part of personality and character is attached to spirituality, as we describe it. These people don't quite have that, so they're attached to their material urges, and I think that's them.
Yeah.
But the problem is, everybody knows that material urges, all of them, are subject to decay and a third law of thermodynamics. Everything rots.
Yeah.
But if we're all like cells in a big hive mind and we come together,
it can be refreshed. It can be updated.
Entropy won't kill us, and we won't die, and that leads straight into the last episode of Years and Years, where the woman uploaded herself into the machine after she dies. So
don't worry about getting old. You can download the latest version.
So they're all clinging together in this hive mind because they're afraid of death.
Yeah.
But they don't have any spirituality, which is why the real people at the top, Bill Gates and that, they're cloning fucking transplant organs for themselves, trying to live on to 150 or as long as they can live, yeah?
Yeah. And various other methods, which we talked about before. But I just want to say a quick hello to people in the chat. Sorry I haven't done the usual kind of shout-out roll call, but I just wanted to pick up on what Eman Padama had put in the chat room about HIV. And it's very much worth...
Eman Padama, I made up now.
Yes, yeah. It's a theory that it's worth people looking into. I'm only saying theory as a caveat because, there's plenty of academics out there that would argue about this, but there is a good amount of evidence to show that HIV is not a real thing. It's not a disease. It's not like something that you catch. It is actually caused by the malfunctioning of your own system, as far as I can remember from the stuff I've read about it. But HIV as the concept that they give the public of this little ball of nastiness that gives people that immunity illness is not real. It's a crafted, what could you call it, like a pseudo disguise that they give to the public in a similar way to the excuses of cancer. It's like, oh, that causes cancer, that causes cancer, that causes cancer. And most of the time they're misdirecting people from the truth of what is actually causing their own cells to go into a cancerous state, because they don't really want to cure it. They just want to perpetuate the illness, or even just the idea of the illness, so that they can use it as a psychological method of control.
And there's money and money, cash. There's plenty of money to be made out of people who are ill. And
HIV treatment, it's expensive.
Just to say my two cents on it. For me, the pre-programming doesn't necessarily equate to being fear porn. I know you're not saying that anyway, but I think that even the numbers that they are releasing and the scale of how it's spreading and the fact that it can survive for 20 days on hard surfaces and that it's airborne, I think that is worrying. When you think of how the coins, the currency, are moved through the populace. But they do want you frightened, though, as we know. It's just like the climate alarmism, the false flag terror events, the school shootings, etc., etc. They want to keep you in a state of fear. They want you to be locked into the reptilian R-complex part of your brain, which keeps you in a fight or flight mode, so that you're not dealing with your emotions correctly in your limbic system, or putting it all together with your neocortex. For me, the overall agenda is to control your physical, digital, and carbon footprints. And as he's been saying, to round up those that are low on the social credit score, as the digital panopticon turns the public on themselves. All of this kind of takes the focus off the Hong Kong riots, incidentally. But again, the bigger picture that they want, for me, to repeat myself again, the bigger picture, they want to merge the sexes, they want to merge us with machine and the animal kingdom through genetic editing, think that's becoming clearer and clearer here. The mandatory vaccines will in my opinion, will genetically edit us to be more compatible with the neural-based connection to the artificial general intelligence hive mind, as Gary was touching on there, the hive mind stuff. And just the final point, final wee tangent, the childish mindset that they want you to be in is fed by a conveyor belt of profit. Best summed up this week in politics in the UK. I don't know if you've seen the female MP. She was wearing the off-the-shoulder top, you know. And and they want you focused on shit like that. And is it Nancy Pelosi? I might be getting the name wrong. She's written up the State of the Union, the papers, like a teenager, you know. And it's like that's the level that they want you to be at, you know. But focusing on that sort of bullshit. That's my rant over.
Yeah, this kind of stuff as well, because the hints about how the pangolin sort of, like I mentioned, you know, sort of bridges that gap between the animal kingdom and the human world.
Exactly.
Like it's a trans kind of creature. It's transhuman almost is the implication, the way they present it.
Funny how that story broke. That's 2 days ago here. The link I found here. Saying about pangolins are possible coronavirus hosts. Scientists say stories. CBS News.
So CBS has now covered it then.
Yeah, this is off CBS News. I'll put a link in the link's in the chat there, Cookie, if you want to share it. It says experts believe the outbreak originated at wild animal markets in Wuhan, China, after analyzing more than 1,000 samples. Scientists found that the genome sequence of the virus in pangolins was 99% identical to that from infected people. That means pangolins are the most likely intermediate host of coronavirus, Li Yahong, president of the university, said, according to state media. So propaganda, no doubt. If you base that last email I read out that I got, mentioning about the Bill and Melinda Gates and all them lot. This is the mainstream sort of, defense mechanism here. Like I say, blame it on the pangolins, and
there's
I think
interesting. Just let me mention this quickly. The interesting cross connection there as well. If you're saying their expert was a Dr. Lee, Dr. Lee, well, like Dr. Yang, Dr. Liu. But that's very similar name to the Dr. Lee that first sort of broke the news about the coronavirus and who recently died.
Interesting. Like I say, that was 2 days ago, that story. So
I think we've got to remember that all viruses have RNA, which is different from DNA. It's not as stable as DNA. So when a virus is in one animal and it goes into another, the different conditions in that second animal, whether it goes from a monkey to a human, are probably what drives a small change in the RNA. Yeah, because no difference between DNA, it transcribes all the things that a cell needs. Well, in a virus, all it does is replicate itself and the proteins it needs around itself. So RNA is quite different from DNA, and it's much more mutable, changeable. So again, I'm wondering about, well, I think it was Emancipate that was saying, that the proteins that are produced on the outside of some of these viruses are identical with what's in the body anyway. Yeah, sure they are. And I mean, it just
that further adds to. I think you mentioned it last week, Gary, saying about they want to shut down the markets, the butchery markets, what they call a wet market. And we were talking about a possibility of them yet again taking a further step to curtail direct human exchange that can't be controlled by the system. So by like this Dr. Lipkin saying, I want the wild animal markets closed. It's another justification they're using to shut down things such as that, so that they can control trade and exchange between people. Sorry, I'll
just
go back to your screen.
Just a wee point on this alternative media business model. Very disappointed to see Mark Passio's recent output. He spent an hour on Vinnie Eastwood's podcast and 3 hours on his last podcast that he put out, whinging and moaning about the cash that he never received on the last forum thing that they all got together and done on. It's like he seems to be more interested in cash these days than any sort of service to truth, regardless of his big service to truth background that he seems to need, behind him, man. So everybody seems to need these green screens these days, to try and get a message across. For me, all you need is a smartphone and an internet connection. That's all you need if you're genuinely just want to communicate and get to the bottom of the truth. That's all you need. You don't need all this fucking expensive setup. It's just it's vile. For me, it's just to finish. It's akin to like fake charity. It's like that sort of level of sickness when somebody's pretending to get to the truth and all they're interested in is the money.
Well, the one thing I didn't listen to all of them, Mark, because I was as bored as you, yeah? But did he actually name the people that stole the money from him? Because apparently they collected a load of money and he was going to give a presentation. And when he turned up, they said, "Oh, we haven't got your money. We haven't got any money for you." And he's like,
I kind of tuned out of that, because in his own words, the people in a certain situation isn't really as important as the event itself. And the event itself isn't really as important as the ideology behind it. So it's just, I just feel as if he's fallen drastically off course.
Yeah. But it's something that's become endemic in this environment. And I don't think it's a discussion unto itself. I don't think it's ever going to go away until a lot of the main sort of stuff starts changing. Yeah, but there's always going to be people that are primarily concerned with making money. That's why they're doing this stuff. They do it to make money. Some of them are much worse than others. Some of them are outright sharks, the snake oil salesmen and whatever. And some of them are just trying to earn a living. So you're sort of stuck between a hard place and a rock, as it were. Yeah, but when it gets to the stage of like all you can do is bitch and moan about how you need more money, it's like, well, maybe you should have done that on a different platform or different way of doing it, right? Yeah.
I saw Mark Passio as coming out of that anarcho-porco, where he gave a really brilliant presentation, basically slagging off everybody else there, but not himself as well, saying, look, we're just not making any progress, we've got to try a bit harder. And like he's not been invited to next year's one, I don't think, although Max is turning up, despite the laser beams.
I think it's another bad premise as well. When you're thinking through how to approach dealing with this stuff, like the classic cheesy cliche of you want to change the world, how do you actually go about doing it? If you expect to be able to utilize a monetary based model, a financially based model, to be able to reach enough people or get the word out there, or however you want to describe it, you're not thinking clearly when you think you can do that against a system for whom not only does it have the monopoly over all financial creation, it has literally unlimited money. It has infinite money available to it. So if you think you're going to set up a business model version of being able to get the truth out there, and we'll smash through the bullshit by using our amount of wealth to force it through, you're idiotic. That's what I say. It's a bad premise to your, consideration of how to deal with this shit. The system has the monopoly on force and wealth creation, and it has nearly a total monopoly on all resources. Nearly a total monopoly on all resources.
And people become impatient as well, don't they? They become very impatient. They don't want to wait.
It's a difficult thing. That's why I like trying to use analogies to try and describe it, because it's a very large concept. It's got a lot of other elements to it. But my usual kind of analogies: if you expect to be able to take the king down by charging at the castle walls, you're an idiot. All you're going to do is you're going to be martyred against those castle walls, and the king is just going to be stronger because the citizens he has under his control are going to see him as being unassailable and even more justified in his claim to being a demigod on earth and all that kind of shit. You might as well just stand in front of them and do like, Monty Python with the Suicide Squad.
They want to just go
at them directly is not the way to do it. Learn a little bit from things like Aikido. You use the enemy's force against themselves. You go a different direction. You come in at a tangent. Use the moving energy to flow with. You don't force it to happen.
And they're doing the right thing because they're exposing things. They're doing things, and they should be. They should give themselves a pat on the back because they're doing good stuff. And they're exposing it.
Never had an internet.
People are getting the information. People can see these things. They're exposing pedophiles. That's what they hate, the exposure. That brings them out into the light, and they don't know what to do. And we're seeing all this now. So it's having a great impact. Everybody who's doing something is doing something. And all right, bitch and moan about a bit of money here and there. Yeah, whatever. It's shit happens, and you just got to get on with it. Just crack on and don't give up and keep doing it. That's what we've been doing for the past 8-9 years or whatever it is. Since so that's what it's about.
That's why as well I appreciate anything that people do.
Yeah,
there's a lot of people out there that have this attitude of, unless you do this much, unless you achieve this particular expectation, you're not doing enough. You're not good enough because you're not achieving that expectation. So, for example, you're not allowed to change the world unless you're living in a hut, being totally self-sufficient on a mountainside, no internet, no electricity, nothing. Then you're allowed to say something. That's bullshit. You do anything, it's like grains of sand that make up the beach. The slightest bit that you add in the right direction is another bit in the right direction. Doesn't matter if it's only an inch.
The people that you mentioned,
great, but even just that little inch makes a difference.
But the people you mentioned, like Mark Passio, for instance, they're doing all this work. They're doing all these conferences. They're going around the place. They're putting a lot of energy into it, and they're human beings as well. I suppose they have, whatever. You'll have maybe sometimes when you're a popular figure, in a sense of how many emails you get every day, how many people are watching your stuff and commenting, and your computers never stops. It must be a kind of a world I would find very hard to actually deal with myself and think this is full on. And then you've got to and then someone interviews you, he interviews you there, and then you just have an interview, you go, oh fuck off, I can't be asked, and then people go, he's like cunt. It's like, I don't know, maybe that's how it is.
What do you mean you're not a demigod with infinite time and patience? How dare you be just another one of us?
That's how it works. That's how it goes. So, humans are humans, and I've seen Max Egan go through that over the years, the same sort of stuff, the same kind of, this crazy stuff. It's like, just crack on, it's like, I'm getting on with my stuff and I'll see the world how I'm seeing it, and, do my own process and things of this nature and try and help others to see, the right way, and Mark Passio does, and all those other people we mentioned, they all do that sort of work. So we all just keep on doing what we're doing, and that's how it spreads. That's the 100 monkey thing as well. It's we don't realize how big it maybe is. We're seeing all this like pressure, fear, and all this media stuff and all this shit they pump out, but we don't know how big it is across the world. How many people are actually, as they want to call it, woke or all that shit? But how many people are on this and realize what is actually happening and see the systems around them being unfair, inequality everywhere. Everywhere you look, every country you're in, it's everywhere. Nobody's happy. So go on, Gary.
This guy has helped that Ken Loach. I've watched about 3 of his films over the last few weeks, and this one, I didn't even know this existed. This is about the Spanish Republic fighting the fascists, and the guy you see there, who's just about to be shot, was a priest, who somebody in confession came in and told him who the people in the village were that are members of the trade unions. And he told the fascists what had been told to him in a confession, and they took 6 or 7 of them out to the edge of the village and shot them. So when they attacked the village, they kill all the fascists, and the last one left is a guy up in the church tower, and it's the priest shooting at them. Yeah, so they took him out and shot him, and then burnt his church. But I mean, that's just one part of this film. But it's really good because you see the spirit. It really catches the spirit of the people and the way they were when the anarchists come together and made up their own militias. They made up their own regiments. Yeah, they didn't need any leaders. Yeah, they just made up their own. But it also covers the way that the Stalinists came in and took control of everything. And the first thing they did was accuse their enemies, the socialists, of doing what they'd done themselves, i.e., collaborating with the fascists. Oh, it's a good film, really, really good film, and it shows that what the spirit is like when the people are actually on the move and doing something good together. Yeah, and
killing people.
Well, I'm sorry. We'll just have to interrupt here for a second for our advertisements here. Are you a premium subscriber to The Truth? If so, please come and buy David Icke, the Dot Connector's new book. It's My Triggered Big Mouse Non-Binary Elephants People's Voice. And back to the show.
I try to listen. Somebody asked me last week, have you heard David Icke's most recent one? So I sat there and I listened to David Icke, and he pauses for a hell of a long time between each sentence.
Oh yes. Aye.
Yeah. Is it witchcraft? Is that what
what he's doing? What he's doing, Gary? It's neuro-linguistic programming, and he's using very short words like this, so that you are hanging on every word that he says.
Sounds like
he talks very quietly sometimes. So you're listening.
It puts your conscious mind into a stumble. So your mind goes through this little choice loop where you're trying to decide, like, do I wait and keep listening in case he says something next, or do I start thinking about something else? So in that way, like Daisy's describing, he grabs your attention and forces you to stumble forward, following him like he's dragging a fucking carrot in front of you.
His information's spot on, though. You can't say he doesn't.
Sometimes, most of the time, yeah.
He does his stuff, and he'll, I think he's. I don't agree with everything, but how he's presented stuff. But I say he's one of those voices out there that still. You listen to the information, and that will lead you on other ways, and your path, but know that things are not right, as we always say. And he collects his money. He does what every other sort of, I suppose, guy would do. I suppose he would make a business of it. He was a TV personality. He thought, right, let's get a manager and let's get this on the road and make some money.
When you mentioned it earlier, I was going to use him as the example to say, and when you start getting that much going on, like loads of emails, and you need a manager kind of thing, you get into the nepotism of giving all those jobs to your family, to your relatives. So now the Icke family runs the Icke Corporation. David Icke is like the thing, the resource that is being produced. But it's most of his family work for him in one way or another.
Gareth Icke and Jamie Icke. Oh, how I love to troll them. Those T-shirts, like my mum went to Benidorm and all I got was this silly T-shirt. I've like sort of edited one of those T-shirts. It's like, because he'll post, like, it's as though it's his opinion, like on Twitter, and then you'll get to the bottom of the article by Jamie Icke or Gareth Icke. So I post the T-shirt every time I post, and it's like, I came here for David's opinion, and all I got was that of his talentless, grasping offspring.
Oh dear! But that's like I was sort of talking about earlier. It's that kind of thing where I think if you approach it with the expectation that you can get rid of them, it's not going to work out that way, and you're going to frustrate yourself. It's going to become a maddening thing to keep pursuing. Like the banging your head against the wall, expecting a different result. Same with the shill hunting kind of stuff. It's the same thing, basically, because what they're looking for when they sell shill, I ranted a lot about how the definition of the word gets misused so much, but whatever. When they're hunting for the shill, what they're actually talking about is trying to find those people that are just exploiting the public, exploiting the viewers by selling them some bullshit and charging them money for it, basically, like a snake oil salesman. So they're following this never-ending task, like Sisyphus trying to push the boulder up the mountain, and he rolls down again, and he has to do it all over again. Trying to approach it in that way is not a way to fix the problem. You're like a lifeguard who never teaches anyone to swim. You're going to be forever, for the rest of your life, for all eternity, you're going to be forever rescuing people from the water because you never taught anyone to swim. Teach people to swim, they can rescue themselves. That doesn't mean you give up looking after, watching the ocean, as it were, to keep an eye out for people who are struggling. You still do that. That's still a good thing to do. But don't do it with the expectation that it's suddenly going to cease the problem of people drowning because they don't know how to swim.
Well, I do that kind of shit to just get it off my chest, and it's a thankless task, and it's never going to change anything. I just like being a wee thought on the side, a wee bit in the boys to them, you know what I mean?
I don't think it's a thankless task, man. I think it is something to be thanked for.
I think
because you are helping other people when they see your comments, and it helps them to engage their brain a bit more and not just buy what the illusionist is putting in front of them. You actually encourage them to use their own thinking ability.
Stop and think and look at the info. Yeah, and this guy might be whatever, but don't start. Again, it's the guru thing we get back to, isn't it? You put them on a pedestal and you start sending them all your cash or whatever, and buying everything and that kind of thing. That's what we're not supposed to be doing.
Are you shilling for Ken Loach now, Gary? You trying to advertise all his works or something? Oh, the anarchist collectives. Okay.
Sam Dolgoff, yeah, but it's library. This book can be borrowed for 14 days. So my review said, go to the anarchist library and get it for free download.
Or go to the archive as well. I think they've got it on there as well.
This is the archive.
Oh, right. Sorry. I didn't see the URL. Yeah.
I joined the other day. It's dead easy. So you can favourite things and leave reviews that might link somebody to something good and save them wasting their time.
It says at the top of the bloody page as well, doesn't it? Internet Archive. I just didn't register because I was too busy looking at the picture and whatever. But yes, using your own cognitive ability and encouraging others to do the same.
That's what it's about.
Yeah. I really don't agree with the people who say you should just stop thinking and just, do what you're told, basically, that kind of shit. Yeah. Order followers. It's not your place to think. It's just your place to be doing what you're told, to do. Oh, that's interesting extra note. So I forgot to mention earlier in my rambling. Gary posted this in a comment under last week's episode when I was talking about that Dr. Huhan episode and the title Praxis or Praxius, as they'd called it. And I was considering whether they were trying to imply a connection to that 2nd century debate about whether God is a triumvirate or a singular being and all that kind of stuff. But Gary put a comment in saying it could be more to do with it's Greek, isn't it, as far as I remember, Gary? Praxis, meaning doing, as a philosophical maxim. You got the three, the thinking, being, and doing. And praxis was the word that meant doing. So possibly by their alteration in the title, Praxius, maybe they were trying to imply that it's something that has been done. Rather than doing is an active, it's a verb, as in you're actually doing at the time. Done would imply past tense, blah, blah, blah. So maybe they were doing that rather than pointing towards 2nd century Christian theological arguments.
They've had that thing a few times, because they had the Arian heresy was the people that wanted to praise God as 3 people and the others that wanted to praise him as one. I mean, that's in the harmonic. This is why I can't understand a man like J. Dyer doesn't recognise Gurdjieff's harmonic, because the first God, the most absolute, is one, and then 3, a step down from that. And
Yeah.
obviously, you're getting further away from purity
Yeah.
by arranging things so that you can understand them.
Yeah, and you're going into density and time. And maybe that's another sort of extra I can add on to that. Listening to Steve's show on Thursday. Hello, Steve. I know you're in the chat, or you were in the chat earlier. He was talking about use of language, which is a way, we construct to create communication, and talking about imagery. Maybe this is my interpretation of what he was saying, but thinking about the concept of a picture, an image, like the one on the screen, image tells 1,000 words or 10,000 words in the Chinese version. But language creates a linear structure. Language creates time. I think I put a few comments in Steve's chat box at the time. I was trying to explain what I was thinking. Language creates time. Another way of thinking it is if you see a single image or a single letter, doesn't necessarily mean a lot other than the classic of a picture can tell 1,000 words. If that single image is 1,000 words, and then you have the process of video or motion picture, you put one image after another, project it at certain frames per second so the eye can't perceive the flicker of each image changing one after the other, but you now have created time, the passage of time. So in the ancient times when we started constructing languages, language was the very concept of time embodied in a way that enabled us to pass information, ideas, knowledge from one to the next, which creates that the foundation that becomes things like the legislative world, where once stuff is written down on a bit of paper, that string of symbols equals a passage of time or a notation about the passage of time. And in doing so, it references certain things such as concepts of property and ownership and stuff like that. What is ownership? You claim you've got a deed to your house, but if I come back to where that house is in 10 million years, are you still going to be, is that house still going to be there with your deed applicable to it? Or is the time going to have moved on so much that the very concept that you had a deed that said you own that little plot of land still going to mean anything? No, it's meaningless. So even, this concept of property relies on the concept of time, which is simply sequential thoughts constructed in such a way that we can discern one thing from another. So it's like Gary's describing about the choice between the 3 or the 1. By subtracting or reducting into that 3, you are creating time, because 3 requires a sequence to be conceived. 1, 2, 3, 3 things together. 3 makes a construct of some kind. 1 is just eternal, a singular moment kind of thing. There's more to that we could discuss. There's more philosophical kind of considerations that you could go over. But it just occurred to me it's relevant about that kind of stuff at the moment, especially when often the propaganda is all about getting people to separate themselves in some manner. Either separate themselves from others, so creating divisions, creating a Hegelian process, or getting them to externalize parts of themselves into something out there that then separates it from themselves. So, the very concept that God is something outside of you, that it exists somewhere out there as like a thing that you can go and visit and prod. These kind of things just fuck up people's thinking. Certainly fuck up their spiritual self. So the system loves doing shit like that.
Well, it's like the system see that as the enemy, and how do you defeat your enemy? Well, you bring up the children, and we don't bring up the children correctly. We don't teach them correctly. We don't teach them that spiritual stuff, their connection, who they are. None of that. And in other countries, like you say, they're ripped apart from families. There's all famine and war going on and all kinds of other horrible shit. But ultimately, they have control of the kids. They mold their minds with education and stuff.
They can separate them from their past, their lineage, their heritage, their culture, their very concept of what it is to be a human or be part of a society. So much you can be separated by doing that.
So we start bringing up our own kids, don't we? We start doing the right things, and that's something that they've made it very difficult for people to do with the way it's set up, especially in the West. It's easier to put them into these, and don't forget, you went to school too, so it's that programming that fits into when you're an adult. That's where your child goes, and you can do whatever you want, work, whatever. But that's the program that runs through generation after generation after generation. But there's more and more who are beginning to pull away from that now, and beginning to see maybe there's a better way. And kids are rejecting school. There is becoming that. We've read stories after stories over the years about how they're trying to introduce even gaming into the education system because kids are so disinterested in the system itself, the whole education thing. And as they get older and older, as they reach the ages like 14, 15, it becomes even worse, and they hate the place. They can't stand it.
I think there is a deliberate little bit of reverse psychology in that, because they actually, I think anyway, this is more just a sort of educated presumption. I think they actually want to be creating a situation where children, the youngest people, are taught by a virtual interaction through no human interaction at all, except maybe some kind of nurse or monitor that makes sure they're connected or something like that. But they want to be able to have children individualized into a connection with a device, learning through a virtual experience or a virtualized experience that will be gamified. So the child will really, really want to do it because they're having fun. They get that dopamine and endorphin kickback from the game that they're playing. But the game is the thing that actually educates them, or the proper way of saying it, the correct way of saying it would be indoctrinates them. So they want the kids not in traditional schools anymore. They want them plugged in to a virtual gamified learning process.
And if they kept, sorry, on you go, Gary.
I was going to say, do you remember that channel called Unite Planet? Two youngish guys who went on the rack on Windows.
Yeah.
Well, they put a couple of sampler videos up the other day of a long interview they got with a guy called Neil Sanders. And he was drawing the parallel between isolation tanks and the way people are getting more and more isolated on the net. And I thought, he's been listening to Cookie, the cheeky bugger. He's been taking off the Cookie, and he's put something together. But it might be interesting. He might have added something.
It might be because quite a few years ago, it's probably going back to like 2011, 2012, I would quite often mention his work and recommend him to people, because back then his website used to be free access. He'd put all his articles and his writings up there, and there was a few of his video presentations up there, and you could access them for free. And so I listened to most of his stuff, and I thought it was great. His coverage of all like the MK Ultra period of history in American history primarily, but also the UK. He's talked about all that kind of stuff, and he's covered it really well. And then when he started to get a little bit noticed, he switched to that business model that we've talked about, and he put a paywall up on his website, and he'd never go and present at a talk or a lecture or whatever unless he was paid. So to me, that was just like, mate, you've just done the same fucking shit. You're not here because you want to get the truth out to people, or you yourself are looking for truth. You're here to make a buck. And his argument is always that, well, his argument, but also the same as many others, is that, well, I have to earn a living. And it's like, mate, fuck off. There's plenty of examples of how to do that without going to the kind of paywall business model. Look at James Corbett. There is no paywall on Corbett unless you want to get into posting comments on his website. And even then, it costs you £1 a month. You can do this. You can earn a living doing this online stuff without having that kind of paywall block and doling out truth to people who pay for it bullshit.
Just before we moved on for that last one, I was thinking, if the kids have got a higher social credit score, will they have the higher bandwidth connection to the hive mind gaming learning matrix?
Yeah, probably. That, or maybe they'll get allowed a certain amount of gaming content. Like maybe they'll have access to certain upgrades or power levels or stuff like that in the gaming world. Whereas if their credit score isn't good enough, they're stuck with the basic vanilla skin and equipment in their character world, you know, shit like that. And it will force kids to fall into line when, for example, you want all of them to accept the kind of politically correct gender dysphoria bullshit that now has however many different varieties of gender, blah, blah, blah. Then you use a penalty system in that gamified world where if they make any indication that they disagree with the required verbatim repeat of the doctrine, they don't get those power-ups and whatever, whereas the other players in the game will do. So they will quickly, especially children, they pick up on that kind of shit quite quick, and they will often just follow the crowd. You know, most children are more inclined to the herd mentality than individuality.
I think as well, like when the universal basic income kicks in and the full automation, and we have to look for new commodities, you know. But obviously that's why, for me, plastic's been demonised as well by now, you know what I mean? Because that will soar as a commodity when you consider like 3D printing, stuff like that, you know. But where's the new hierarchy? Is it the person that sits on top of it with the most powerful brain chip? Or does that become redundant if you're the most powerful hacker in the world, you know? Stuff that we've touched on offline about, you know.
I'd be the same guys that live in Switzerland and never fucking touch a mobile phone. They just swan around their hunting estate up in the mountains of Switzerland, humping all the local girls because they've got the rights of the seigneur. I was watching something the other day that sort of almost clicked for me. Almost. It was Ken Wheeler, Mr. Magnetic Man, and he was going on about how the ether and Tesla and the concept of free energy, and you know, people saying, oh, they've tried to do it mechanically, and he said that people have missed the point. The free energy is there; it's in the ether, and he tried to explain the math and the physics of how the ether is pushing in on everything that's material. And so all Tesla was doing was opening up a door to the ether, which let the energy flow through, yeah? And then he went on to give another analogy, and then he said something about, you know, when you're sitting in the cinema, you know, and, you know, if it's a long film, you might be sitting next to a girl, and she might start tearing up, and then he said it in quite a critical way. So my comment was, well, hey, Ken, maybe that girl sitting in the cinema who starts getting emotional, maybe she's opened a door to an emotional ether with a unlimited supply of energy.
It's true.
It's
certainly
comment.
Yeah, but it's certainly true in a psychological sense of for people with repressed memories, or even just, you know, everyday memories that you've been reluctant to deal with, or you've sort of filed them away because they were painful or something like that, bad memories. And something like that kind of situation, you're watching a movie or you're listening to some music or something causes the memory to recur, and you get that release of that energy that's been pent up in you, building a force field around it. So like you're blocking the ether from flowing freely, you know, in a psychological way. That's kind of what we do with bad memories. We try to isolate them and put a wall around them. You know, you don't want to visit them because they make you upset and shit like that. But that can be a very, very unhealthy thing to do. You know, it's part of a lot of the modern indoctrination of them persuading people that they can have this fanciful bubble of, you know, imperceptible inassailability. You know, in other words, don't bring no negativity in my zone, man. I'm in my little bubble of happy world. Yeah?
That's an amnesic barrier that you form to block out traumatic events in the past. I've heard Nassim Haramein talking about the power contained within the ether as well. I know there's certain things that you might want to ignore from him as well, but I think he has done a lot of good work as well, you know.
That's what when people are saying, oh, the universe is love. and all you've got to do is open yourself to it. You know, that's connected. I mean, Ken didn't say that. That was the reason for my comment, because Ken was talking all about energy and that. I'm saying, yeah, but there's emotion there as well, yeah.
And you can also say it's a simplified concept of love that most people have. And when somebody says all of the universe is love, or the energy is love, they're talking about something much more akin to the generative force. That's why I often prefer to say that, you know, to talk about the generative force, because if it's that force that enables life to happen, and the only way you can love is if you're alive, then that means the generative force is the equivalent of love, what we define as love. But the general simplified concept of love is what we as people, you know, feel, you know, and which is partly chemical, partly psychological. And then you've got the higher level of the spiritual, that energetic essence of love, which is the creation of all things. So the generative force is the foundation, and you can call it love. That's why I talk about one love. It's nothing to do with fucking Satanism, for fuck's sake. It's that generative force that is everything.
One idea Rodney Collins put forward from Uspensky is that our bodies like allow that energy to flow through, and it's the energy we're resisting that makes up our character and our personality. So everybody's character and personality is impurity, because that is
entropic
energy that you're resisting, which is an interesting idea, but not very practical. Not much praxis to it. Yeah, which I think is related. The word praxis is related to the word practical. Yeah, I'm pretty sure on that.
Yeah, probably, man. Yeah, I never thought to look up some etymological connections, but it probably is.
Yeah, practice would probably be better. Yeah, because it is the verb practice, to do.
Well, you can't run from yourself, can you?
No, wherever you go, there you are.
You are there, and only masks anything you have created as a caricature of yourself. Is just that. It isn't really you.
And there's no obligation whatsoever for you to be the one. Max is going to do that for you. He's the one. Not you, and they won't come for you because you're not the one. Max is the one.
Somebody get him a fiddle so he can keep fiddling while Australia's burning.
He's even got a badge there now. Yeah, he's put his name inside a badge, just like a police badge.
Yeah, in case you didn't know, folks, he's currently appearing on Raconteur News with Sean.
Oh, there you go.
So, but that wasn't going to stop me from doing a regular broadcast. You got the choice. You listen to us, or you go listen to him, or you could do something else completely different entirely. And now for something completely different. Let me do a quick shout out to the people in the chat. Thanks for joining us, folks. So I haven't interacted much. You know what I'm like now. I dip in and out now and then. One of the nights we'll have to do one where it's just interacting with the chat box and see, you know, just answering questions and stuff like that. Roberto, hello. Thanks for joining, right? And that's you lot. And Ben, hello. It's Dr. Rock. Hello, hello. And lots of Tatfro, hello. And the Dot. I know the Dot is cannabis space life form. Hello, right? And Eman Padama, hello. Thanks for all the comments with the information. And signposts for people. And Lewis, hello, Lewis Alexander Rimmer, hello. I'm scrolling down. I said hello to you. And you. I said hello to you. Tazzy, hello. Hope you're all right. And Steve, hello. I thought I saw you in there earlier. And Richard, hello. Richard Crooks. Yeah, you want to look into the stuff about HIV. And if you go back far enough to like the 90s when it was all sort of starting to hit the news a lot, there's a lot of evidence to imply, certainly to build an argument on the ghettoization process in the USA included the pushing of situations or the creating of situations that would enable the spread of HIV. So they had things like vending machines where you could buy needles, and of course, out of a bunch of junkies, desperate to get their fix, one of them would buy a needle, and then they'd just share it between all of them. So things like that had happened, as well as other deliberately constructed ways that they would create problems for people in those ghetto areas. Krishna, hello. Thank you for joining us. And Bright, hello, Bright. And Earache, hello. Yeah, I didn't really mention Brexit tonight, but I did mention it last week, the fact that the coronavirus started straight after Brexit. So, so convenient, wasn't it? Andy Manchester, hello. All right, thanks for joining us, folks. Thanks for giving us your attention for a couple of hours-ish. So, are we going to be back on Wednesday night?
Yes.
You got your new setup going.
Back to full speed Wednesday evening. Yeah, reality chat 8 o'clock on the reality chat channel. So yeah, we'll be back.
Cool. And Steve will be on with the mystery show on Thursday night. As far as I know.
Excellent. I've got a couple of stories that I didn't want to share tonight because they're new stories about other things.
So for Wednesday, huh?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah. Save them all up, Gary, because I haven't been looking at a lot of stuff. I've only got a couple of things. I've just started looking the last day or so, because my last 3-4 weeks has been just chaotic moving and stuff. I've done nothing but shift boxes and moving backwards and forwards a lot, and just busy, not looking at the internet, and having no connection for 10 days didn't help. So
maybe it did help. Apart from your stress of having to move house, at least you didn't have that additional stress of all the shit they're projecting at us.
That guy Scott Webb put a video out the other day about changing house because he moved as well.
Yeah.
Changing the carrier from one house to another, and they're like, "Oh well, we won't be able to connect you for 2 weeks more anyway." What? Yeah, I mean, it was.
Well, we had to wait 10 days to get this fired up. It's working now, obviously. But yeah, 10 days. And they sent us this little miniature mini hub thing, which was completely useless, really. It didn't work. You could browse the net a little bit, but it wasn't very good. And then you had your 4G. It depends how much data you end up with having in your accounts or whatever. And that gets sucked up quite quickly, as you know, if you're watching something streaming or whatever. So it was limited. I had a little bit, but I didn't really have time to look at anything anyway. Like I say, moving, takes up all your time. So
that must be a fucker when you turn on the Daily Mail, and it says 1 megabyte, 2, 3, 4, 5, as all the fucking ads start coming up.
Yeah. Or it's all images of the Kardashian down the right hand side. Here's your soft porn for the day.
Yes, but we still have to, like I say, find so much stuff you should have thrown out 10 years ago, and you're still finding it. And you think, maybe I need to start decluttering a bit yourself. So yeah, there's that process going on as well still. But we're getting there. Not long now. It'll be back to normal.
I don't mind covering news articles and things like that, but it fits better on Wednesday. That's what we do on the Wednesday night.
Yeah, I save them up for then, and we'll go through them, and we'll talk about the lunacy, the mainstream media bullshit. I've set up a new folder, mainstream media bullshit. That's all it's called. So we'll throw it in that folder. That's where it goes. Now
as well, you'll be able to do screen shares without your computer collapsing.
Exactly. Well, that's should be good. Yeah. I'm so used to having a shit system running for so many years, and then suddenly it's working. It's amazing. So yeah.
Well,
check it out. Go on, man.
I was going to say, don't forget, it's their gods that we're aiming for. I mean, we've seen how just absolute robotic these Extinction Rebellion people are. You know, you've got to find a way to get through to them. So say to them, look, joining the hive mind isn't going to save you from death. You'll never be able to upload who you really are, who you really want to be to the net. It won't happen. I mean, they would be so taken aback. And maybe they'd make the connection and think, yes, that's why I'm following this ridiculous course of climate change, because I'm scared of, I don't know.
The next phase.
Yeah,
So remember, folks, you can get your esoteric dose on Mondays and the news breakdown on Wednesdays. You can get it all here on the UK's premium truth podcasts.
And if you really want to prove your devotion to the truth, I have some dirty T-shirts I haven't washed for quite a long time, and you can buy one for £100 each. Doesn't say anything on it about the show, but you know, if you want to buy merchandise, I'll sell you some dirty laundry.
Recommended crystal for the week.
Join our mug club.
The recommended crystal for the week.
Maybe I should get some plain white coffee mugs and a black marker and just write something on the side of them and sell them. Yeah. But no, it would just get too silly too quickly, and it would become the very thing that we're trying to avoid. So anyway, once again, thanks for joining us, folks. Thanks for giving us your attention for a bit. Headlight for sale. Hello. Yeah, maybe I could dig out some old headlights and sell them. Yeah. Get a black marker and write truth on the front and go, here you go, I found it. You are now illumined.
Truth of headlights.
Projects truth onto your wall. Yeah. That's a good. I shouldn't have said that. Now I'm giving away marketing ideas. Anyway, yeah. See you again soon, folks. Take care. Don't forget.
My internet guru saw God's laser, and all I got was this lousy mug.
All right, take care, folks. I'm going to click the button.
Cheers, guys.
Cut cheese.